Hello and welcome to another episode of The Exchange.
Today we're looking at the gadgets that help run our lives and keep us connected.
That's right, smart technology is there to make us smart, but does it?
Remember the days when you could ask a question and someone had to use their brain to give you an answer? These days we have smartphones, almost unlimited information at our fingertips. There's never been a time in history where information has been so easily available. But are we now so dependent on technology that we don't need to really think anymore? Are we becoming dumber due to smart technology?
Joining us today we have Dr Kirsty Goodwin, Director of Every Chance to Learn. Kirsty's an expert on kids and technology. She runs parent seminars and teacher workshops on technology and early learning and brain development. Welcome, Kirsty.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
That's
Looking forward to what you
pleasure.
have to say today.
Excellent.
We're also joined by Hugh Stevens, the Director of Dialogue Consulting, who specialises in providing social and digital media strategy. He's passionate about better engagement through online channels. Great to have you with us, Hugh.
Good to see you guys too.
Yeah. Let's start with you, mate. In your opinion, do you think smart technology is making us smarter?
Much as it's a horrible answer, I think the answer is sometimes yes and sometimes no. And definitely there's some huge benefits we've seen, and the ability to be able to even just pull out a map when you're in the city, I think is definitely a huge improvement, perhaps compared to having
Pulling out the map's not the problem, folding it away
Well, yeah, exactly.
is the problem afterwards.
And so I think there's some of those absolutely huge benefits that we've seen. And in the other side, of course, you sit on the tram now and, every single person's sitting there in their own little world, for better or worse.
Or even in a cafe where you've got, 5 or 6 people sitting around a table and they're all on smart technology.
Yeah, so would you say it's quite polarised? You've got your techno-optimists and your techno-skeptics. Is there are you finding that there's two different pools of people, Kirsty?
Absolutely, I do. In the work that I see, parents are either really looking for healthy ways that they can use technology and wanting to embrace it and want their children to be part of this digital culture. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've got parents who are absolutely petrified about using technology and handing over gadgets to their children. So it definitely is a polarised debate.
And given your area of research, what are we finding in terms of literacy and learning? Is it helping or is it hindering?
I like to say that technology is a tool. It really is neither good nor bad. It depends on how we're using it. However, we are seeing that literacy is totally being redefined by technology. We've got a whole wealth of new tools that are changing the way that children communicate and that they comprehend. So we've got preschoolers, for example, creating digital stories on iPads. I was in a primary school the other week where some Year 3 children were doing their traditional book review, but were using a movie, creating digital movies to convey their message about their book review. So totally different ways of communicating.
One of my favourite pictures, and I think it's on YouTube, it's a video of a little baby. I think she's probably about 9 months old and she's lying on her tummy, can't even walk, and there's a piece of paper in front of her with a picture and she's doing this on it, trying to make the picture bigger. And I'm thinking, my goodness, it's starting at 9 months.
It does.
Does that hinder children in any way when it starts so young?
Look, I say to parents, err on the side of caution, particularly with very young children and babies. We now have the iPotty. We've also got the iPotty. The iPotty. It's the potty that has the iPad contraption attached to it. So you can now toilet train your child. Oh, it gets better. We've also got the activity seat from Fisher & Price. So you've now got your baby bouncer that has the iPad attachment hovering over the baby as it's sitting there rocking in the bouncer.
and what do you think, Hugh? Do you think this is good or?
Oh, look, I mean, I sort of see it generally as it's another, in many ways at that age, I think it's just another toy. And whether it's, different or alternative to something else, it's a way to actually allow the child to engage with something.
But when you say it's another toy, I would have thought that, those age-old little things where they have hexagons and little ovals and you spatially have to put them, you're teaching certain brain patterns that you can't teach on a screen. Is that?
Or can you teach it on a screen?
Well, we're conducting a bit of a living experiment. We really don't have any evidence or longitudinal information to tell us the impact these technologies are having on children. What we're drawing on is our information from the neuroscience that tells us that children still need what we call ancestral parenting. The way our grandparents raised us, they still need those rich hands-on experiences. They still need to have serve and return interactions with their carers, and they need to form solid relationships. And that's where we've got to be really mindful about where technology fits into that picture.
Yeah, so we're going to make sure that we maintain the old as we embrace the new. Is that what you find from your experience as well, Hugh?
I mean, I think that's definitely the case. And it's sort of that question of, you know, what is the role of what I'd call independent playtime? And should technology be a part of independent playtime? You know, I agree, you know, technology should never replace actual, you know, interaction between a parent and a child. You know, that's an absolute. But
and it can also, technology can be a great way to foster interaction too. We've got apps, for example, there's a great storytelling app called Kindoma, and it allows children, it's a book app essentially, but it's a book app with 2 pop-up Skype windows within the app. So you could have mum or dad who are travelling interstate or grandparents overseas reading a book in real time with a child, yet be miles apart. So it can do...
That's quite incredible.
And that's what we need to look for. We've got to look for the gems and look for where technology is letting us do totally new things in new ways, not just the digital replica. And I think that's where it becomes the slippery slope, where we just digitalise potties, for example.
Yeah, which I've never heard of that one before. But
and that definitely could be a very slippery slope.
Let's move on from there. My concern is when I think iPads and iPhones and things like that are used as a babysitting tool, and you see your child or children on that just as a means of keeping them quiet and occupied.
And there's some research out there, Kristy, about parents feeling disempowered in regard to playing with their kids because they're worried about, well, you know, everybody's playing on iPhones, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I call it techno-guilt, and there's a lot of techno-guilt out there. Parents feel really concerned that they are, first of all, handing their devices over. We've actually got a phenomenon called the pass-back effect, and it's where parents are literally passing back their digital devices. And they do that for a range of reasons. Being a parent myself, I've done all 3 reasons. I use it to entertain, I use it to educate, and sometimes I use it to pacify. And it's about, I guess, making sure that we use it in healthy ways, not always reverting to the technology to be the pacifier.
Yeah. Hugh, is smart technology more focused on quantity rather than quality?
I mean, it all depends on how you use it, really. And I think that's something that is very hard, and even in an adult environment is a very good question of, is it about quality, is it about quantity, and do people go, you know, too far either way? And I think that's definitely the case where in adults as well as children you have people that are essentially illiterate with technology compared to, you know, what I would call the sort of common standard, simply as a result of the fact that they've shunned it. And alternatively, you of course have the opposite, where, you know, you have people who spend their entire lives on it, whether they're kids or adults. And I'm probably one of the ones that lean to spending more time on it, but, you know, that's an occupational hazard. But I think it goes both ways.
But it can be addictive though, can't it? I mean, I know people that as soon as you put something on Facebook, they respond straight away, and it appears to me that they're on it all the time, and there's probably a level of addiction there. Would you say that's right or not?
Oh, I mean, addiction's quite a complex topic, and clinical addiction I think is quite separate, and whether or not internet addiction is actually a real psychiatric phenomenon or not.
Is it addiction or is it dependence? Like, Kristy, would you head home if you forgot your mobile phone?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. There is actually a condition called nomophobia, and it is that fear... Nomophobia, that fear of not having your mobile phone or being attached to internet connection, and it is a legitimate concern that a lot of people have. Would I go home? I live in Sydney, and when Sydney traffic is horrendous, my answer could be different, but generally I would. And it is that I rely on it for my job. We've recently moved house and had no internet connectivity for a period of time, and I honestly felt displaced.
How awful!
So that is that's a dependency, and I think you made a very valid point then, just to classify it as addiction as opposed to dependency. You know, because we have everything on it, don't we? I mean, shopping lists and bank statements and contacts.
Well, just out of interest, would you go home for your mobile phone, Hugh?
Oh, probably.
Yeah. Kristy?
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, and I would too, so there you go. But like you say, so much of your life
I mean, we don't memorise phone numbers. In fact, I recently had a situation where I had to even think twice of Rob's phone number.
Yes. And there's actually, they're calling that the Google effect, and scientists at Harvard University have actually found that we're not actually recalling as many details in our long-term memory and even our short-term memory because we're offloading it to technology. We know that we can later Google it and retrieve the information, so we're not committing it.
And we don't think through things, we don't process, because we know it's all on the device and we'll look at it just when we need to.
Maybe as well as part of the fact that there is so much information around today. I read a quote the other day and said that there is more information in the daily newspaper than what someone would have learnt in their entire life in the 1700s. And so it's probably, you know. Anyway, we've got to take a break and we will be back with more Street Talk right after this.
Do you think smart technology is making us smarter or dumber?
Dumber in some ways, but smarter in some other ways.
I think it makes us smarter because you can always check everything you want to know.
No, actually, it's making us smarter in different ways, but dumber because we sit there and we're so glued in on technology so much. Like, I sit on the bus and everyone just sits there looking out the window doing nothing.
In your opinion, is smart technology making us smarter or dumber?
Oh, sorry, I've just got a tweet to answer first.
I reckon it's making us more, to be honest, like antisocial in the aspect of communicating with other humans, such as now sort of thing.
A lot of people text, so when they're written words, they're all in text and you've got to think about it. Being my age, you need to think about what does it really mean?
No, seriously. I think it's making us smarter. We've got a lot more access to information and other people's opinions, but I think it's making us socially inept.
I think much smarter, yes.
How so?
I think deep down, most of us are too lazy to go and find out about things, and with the technology we've got today, it's just a matter of pressing a button.
We lose this socializing. We stop talking to each other because we're just chatting or looking at our smartphone.
Are you concerned going forward because you're a young person?
Yeah, in a way, yeah, I'm concerned. I know I just got an iPhone. And before that, I didn't have an iPhone, and to be honest, yeah, I'm on it a lot more than I used to be. And
do you use smart technology?
No, I do not. I'm 76 and I'm just quite happy to relax.
I actually think people just have to get with it. You know, don't let technology rule you. You rule technology.
Do you think smart technology is making us smarter or dumber?
Dumber.
How so?
Well, kids aren't using their brains. I like the old 3 R's, arithmetic, writing and whatever. The 3 R's anyway. Reading, yeah.
Oh, I love that. The 3 R's. What was the last one? Welcome back. We're discussing smart technology, dumb people with Dr Kirsty Goodwin and Hugh Stevens from Dialogue Consulting. And Sandra, our Street Talk reporter, joins us. Welcome.
Great to be back. Hi.
I love all the comments there. Is it making us smarter or dumber? Yes and no.
Well, yes, it's making us a little bit smarter, but it's also making us a little bit dumber. So which one? Yeah. Quite interesting, And I think the fact that two things kind of stood out to me. The socially inept side of things, that smart technology is making us socially inadequate in some ways, which, you know, I'd like to obviously explore a little bit. But that last lady that we kind of made fun of, the 3 R's, I actually did wonder, is smart technology affecting those 3 R's? Are kids able to write?
Are people even able to remember them? But it's not even the 3 R's. It's the you know, when did you last get a handwritten thank you note?
And it is changing the way that kids are communicating. We know, for example, when kids use short message communication, the text messaging, we sometimes think that it's hampering their capacity to communicate, but we actually know that it improves their writing skills. Even though they're using abbreviations, they're learning to spell because they have to sound things out phonetically. So it is definitely changing, and it just depends, like we've all been saying, it really depends on how it's being used as to whether it's making us smarter or dumber.
And where does that balance come, Hugh? Is that?
I think a really interesting example is, and I was working with a group of executives just recently, so adults, rather than kids.
Real people.
And it was actually a really interesting experience hearing from them and how they had sort of discovered and sort of were learning a bit about Twitter, because in Twitter you have to condense everything into 140 characters. And these are sort of, you know, quite well-seasoned executives working in government, and they found it really, really challenging. Really, really difficult to be able to condense an idea into a sort of short snippet. And so equally, you know, you sort of go, well, maybe that's actually a valuable lesson kids are learning, and working in communications, you know, being able to actually condense a message into a sort of, you know, and get your message across in as few words as possible is a very key skill.
Yes. I think it's great. There was debate a while ago, wasn't there, whether or not Twitter would extend it. And I think they came to the conclusion that they were going to leave it at 140 characters, and I think it's a great decision. Say it short and sweet.
It is an art form, but it's learning the art form on both sides.
Exactly.
It's learning it condensed, but also to hold an argument in more words than that.
Sandra, the guy that was 76 who said, I just want to relax. Well, it's actually, my parents are in their late 70s, and that's the only way they can really communicate with us, and they find it relaxing.
Yes, he obviously has it in his head, though, that it's not.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he's found it not relaxing.
Yeah, true.
Look, I've seen firsthand my 90-year-old grandmother left the workforce when the latest technology was liquid paper on her typewriter. Since moving interstate, she's embraced Skype and email, and she has regular Skype calls with my son, so with her great-grandson, and they sing nursery rhymes, so they're still having all of those traditional experiences that just wouldn't be possible without the technology. So it can, especially if older people are embracing it.
Yes, and when there's distance involved, it's marvellous, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So for those aspects, it's not making us socially inept, though.
No.
It's actually improving our quality of interaction.
Absolutely. I think when we're becoming socially inept is when we're glued to our devices. It's that pass-back effect that we see in cafes and technology becoming the digital pacifier or the digital babysitter, that we're losing those. I call it real FaceTime, and we still need that.
As a parent, what boundaries would you suggest are healthy?
Look, I say to parents, where possible, the best thing that you can do for your child is to embrace this technology. Don't fear it or ban it. The iPad won't be uninvented. The technology is here to stay. The genie's out of the bottle. So where possible, co-view. Use the technology with your child. Try and interact. Simple things like watching TV with your child, or even asking questions after they've watched TV actually improves their language skills. So if you can be there, and just don't fixate too much on just the how much. I think as parents, we're always quantifying how much screen time they've had. I think there's bigger questions that we need to look at.
Like what?
We need to look at when children are using technology. For example, if it's in that 90-minute period before children go to bed, we know that the blue light that's emitted from these devices that they're using actually stops their bodies making melatonin. They need that melatonin to fall asleep. So we're seeing children with huge sleep delays that are accumulating and causing sleep debts. So that's a bigger issue, I think, than just saying, well, an hour of screen time a day is all you're allowed.
It's the time that actually counts.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I think one of the Street Talk people that you interviewed summed it up beautifully, and they said, don't let it rule you.
Yeah.
That's really good. Sandra, thanks for popping in.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more right after the break. Welcome back. We're discussing smart technology, dumb people. Hugh, I want to know, will certain things that we're used to, will they die? Like, will we stop writing with pens, for example?
Look, who knows? And I think it's really interesting to see how that sort of technology changes. And, you know, I think in many ways it ebbs and flows. And you look at the comeback of vinyl and the comeback of even, you know, I guess old school technology like typewriters or, you know, like fountain pens even. And sort of there's always that place for that sort of almost, I guess, vintage feeling.
Is it the retro's cool?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that sort of is something that isn't going to change, and it's definitely not going to change in the midterm or the long term. I think you'll always have that sort of idea of, I guess, almost the fun of using legacy technology.
Yeah, the emphasis though on it has changed. I mean, I remember being bought my first fountain pen, and then I remember being bought my first good fountain pen when I graduated, and I've still got them, and they're implements that I will always use, but it's not sort of the same nowadays.
No, but we're also seeing the two merge together. There's a brilliant app out there for children that need to rote learn their maths. So the killer times tables that you need to rote learn. There's a brilliant app by Shiny Things. It's called Quick Math. And you're jotting it down. And it lets children, it presents a whole lot of your traditional maths algorithms, but you answer using your finger. So you actually write, you know, what's 5 plus 3, and you have to physically write on your tablet or touch screen what the answer is. So we're sort of marrying, we're seeing the two worlds collide in an exciting way.
Although it doesn't help with penmanship.
No.
But it's still, as you say, it's getting closer.
Yeah.
What's some of the advice, Kristy, that you would give to parents about good usage? What's acceptable, what's not acceptable?
I say to parents that they play an absolutely critical role. As I alluded to before, this technology is here to stay. So putting our head in the sand isn't the solution. We have to embrace it and look for ways we can leverage it. So I say to parents it's really helpful, really important that we help foster healthy media habits. So we really need to show children how they can use technology in healthy and appropriate ways. One of the best things we can do, and it's also the hardest, self-confessed, I find this really difficult, is to model healthy media use. Having sacred screen-free places in the house where technology is just a no-go zone.
Like where?
So like where? Bedrooms, without a doubt.
And you listening to this, sweetheart?
Definitely bedrooms, particularly for children because of that sleep issue that we were talking about before. Simple things like the kitchen table. Just as a family, negotiating and agreeing upon places that are going to be screen-free so that we can have and preserve some of those really important rituals and family experiences.
Yeah, I really, really like that. What about you, Hugh? Some of the guidelines that we can take away from the program today that will help us manage technology in a smart way?
Look, I totally agree with Kristy in saying that I think you need to understand it and you need to model it before you really worry about, you know, other people using it and even how you actually can, you know, impact or, I guess, allow your children to use it. But having said that, I think, you know, a lot of these issues that we've discussed today aren't in any way, you know, confined to kids. And you have adults that just as equally don't have boundaries within what's phone time and what's not phone time.
So true.
It's so true. And a classic example of that is something as simple as, if you need to get up in the middle of the night, you tend to use your iPhone to get you to the bathroom.
Yep.
I mean, hello, buy a $2 torch, which we're doing for holidays. You know, and the other thing is, you know, you want to listen to your, you know, your music. So instead of putting it on another gadget that is not related to your phone, you tend to put it on your iPhone. So
I just switch mine to airplane mode, though, if I don't want to answer calls.
You still have the gadget with you, and there's still that feeling of an uninvited guest.
Right, so,
and look, I think an element of it is that, you know, you need to accept the guest and welcome the guest because
Except
it has,
for at the
it has
table
value.
and in the bedroom. Right.
Exactly. But you need to push them away at other times. There are some things that phones don't belong in, and perhaps the bedroom is one of them for both adults and children.
Well, especially, you know, what you were saying before, Kristy, about the blue light stopping you from sleeping properly. I agree with that. You know, being on that thing lasting at night is going to be counterproductive.
Absolutely, and for adults too. I also talk to parents about not so much before, of trying to avoid technology before school. And it's not all technology, but it's the rapid fire. So those fast-paced cartoons that children often watch, or the video game that really hyper-stimulates them, isn't what young children need if we then want to plonk them into a classroom and expect them to sit and listen to a teacher. So it's not saying that the video games and the fast-paced cartoons are bad for children per se, but it's again when we're using it.
So we control them, we don't allow them to try to control us.
Yeah.
And I think it's important as well, like when I was growing up, we had social networks and it was called Outside.
Yes.
And we've got to remember that one as well. Hugh and Kristy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for joining us on The Exchange. Don't forget to go to our website. There's a fact sheet there. That'll give you some great information about today's program, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
See you then.